Yeah, I mean, I think there's what, three more rounds after this, right? Both these players at 8-1-1. We basically think you can top eight, right, at X and 2. These players are technically slightly better than that right now. So easily, if they win out, they're going to see them in the top eight. But like you said, there might even be a chance that we make it with a loss or, get the coveted Pro Tour invite. I think, both players wouldn't be happy to miss top eight. But, if you get the PT invite as well, it's hard to, be too upset about it all.
Yeah, using the previous RC in Ottawa as a reference point, X3, all X3s made top 12, I believe. I will double check that myself real fast, even though I was there, so I should know this. But X3 was in, and then X2, X2 definitely makes top 8. X2 1 should be good for top 8. There may be some weird kind of tiebreaker scrum there. No, but no, X3s will make it in, and then last time an X31 was on the outside looking in. So we think this one is a little larger, I believe, but this time around, X21, certainly for D-Rood or for Kevin, that will be enough. So that's the goal they're shooting for here.
Yeah. And the players are shuffling up. So we mentioned before, Team of Prowess underselling things a little bit here on kind of everything that's going on when it comes to Kevin's deck. And then, D-Rude basically on tried and true stock is it. He even tweeted after the event, basically on stock is it here. Who do we think is favored? Because, I mean, if Kevin's playing this sort of deck, right, he probably thinks he's at least favored in some aspect of playing over, stock is it, right? But do you think the mirror is one of the spots where he gains percentage points?
Yeah, this is I'd call it a pseudo mirror, right? Because I think his deck is different enough with this, Beanstalk package, and then he doesn't have a lot of the fast creature threats. The only creature in his deck is Hearth Elemental, in fact. So his deck philosophically, I mean, there's a lot of the same overlap, right? Color, talent, and those cards are so good that you'll find a way to play them if you can. But his deck is kind of zigging instead of zagging, and he has beat two prowess decks in the tournament so far, against Maxtor and Johnny Gutman, so two very accomplished players. And clearly, if you're registering a deck like this for the tournament, you think you have a decent prowess matchup. A lot of people think that. A lot of them are wrong. But I would trust Kevin more than most of those people. And we got a reader, Mason. Tarnation Vista claims another victim.
Honestly, I had to explain it to somebody last night after I got done, and they were like, "What is it?" And what this is like, Dom. After you talk all day, especially that first 30 minutes when you get done, you're sort of in a haze. I'm like, it's like Nykthos, but not really. But it's mixed color, and I think it does the. I don't get here, and I find the card for them. And it's also like a friend who's like kind of into Magic, so they're like, "Did you see anything cool today?" And it's like, yeah, I don't know how to describe it.
I
Anyways, here we're going to see some interaction into Monastery Swiss Spear into Storm Chaser's talent.
Yeah, so a really nice start from D-Root. Despite being on the receiving end of constant Tarnation Vista propaganda from various Sanctum of All people and Otters aficionados, I still got some of the details wrong because it has the weird thing of you declare a color and then it taps for that color, but then if you're doing the extra mana mode, it counts all of the things you have colors for. So right now, right, Vista is on green. He chose green, but if he had a talent and a cutter and a monk, he would make blue, white, red if he activated it, and there would be no
Yeah.
green in sight. So it's a weird thing to kind of track, and not a mainstream card, so people aren't used to tracking it yet. But maybe they will be if Kevin's deck picks up here.
Yeah, you can tell too that this card probably got tested a bunch because you probably don't start for each color among monocolored permanents, like on the first pass, and then someone goes, "Well, what happens if you put like Niv Mizzet in play, Reborn?" And someone's like, "All right, for each monocolor," it's like one of those things where just a very weird card. As we pull back on screen here, up the Beanstalk, not a weird card, just a powerhouse card gets played. We draw a card into another powerhouse card and torch the tower. We talked about cards that kind of went under the radar at first. I think that's one that at least I personally did not fully appreciate, just how impactful it was going to be.
Oh yeah, I mean we've had cards like Magma Spray, Flame Blessed Bolt, right? Do very good work in the past. So this is spiritual successor to those, but
Mhm.
the bargain text, sometimes you turn that to your advantage, right? Like we saw some of these sacrifice decks. You sacrifice your Wellsprings in other formats, or your things that have triggers when they die, and then 2 damage versus 3. I mean, when that matters, that really matters. right?
Yeah, it's
Uh,
huge. Especially too, the scry comes up a fair bit too. Like my kind
yeah,
of thought on that card was sort of like it's a role player you're probably sideboarded every now and again, like magma spray, right? You know, but it is just honestly over impressed a ton. Now what's happened here is David picked up his deck, put the sleight of hand card on bottom, but we accidentally didn't pick up what looks to be one card. So we just called a judge to make sure that we're fixing everything. No ill will. Both players caught it. It's all good in the neighborhood. Honestly, I hope there's not even a warning. I think this is just a moment of us trying to make sure we keep the game clear. Nothing bad happened. Sleight of hand,
yeah.
loving.
This is the kind of thing I think too, where if this was just at any other table, you could easily resolve it yourself between you. But on the feature match, we want to make sure it's all done officially and cleanly. So back to the action here. David will continue taking game actions with Opt.
Yeah. I really love cantrips on coverage. It's just fun for everyone involved. As we are going to get in here with this Otter Monstrous Raged. That's going to be, I believe, 7 damage coming across here.
Yeah, so David taking the chance to get a nice big hit in, and I think he knows seeing 2 torches down for Kevin already. Even though the shields are down in one sense, right? Like, no mana up to represent spells. The power triggers won't carry over to Kevin's turn. So the Otter is vulnerable, but there aren't actually a ton of ways in Kevin's deck for him to cleanly get it off the board now. Just the other torches and the roaring furnaces. And if it was getting bounced, it was getting bounced regardless. So, may as well let it get a nice hit in while it still can.
And speaking while we still can, Kevin's having to think, what am I going to do while I still have time to play some cards? A lot of monocolored lands, not much duels. Some of the awkwardness to playing, these we talked about yesterday, like analyze the pollen type mana bases or these like 3-color bases in standard. Sometimes, it gets a little awkward as up the beanstalk triggered for the this time big enough, and then it was basically bounced chat, but then immediately replayed. So that's why you see Kevin sort of point to it again and draw another card. These players are just shortcutting a little bit, know each other, and just not really worth wasting time. As we are going to see Drake Hatcher in to Stormchaser's talent.
Yeah, so Diru continues doing stuff, but is kind of out of action in the short term. So if Kevin can, have a big turn here, if he has another this sounding big enough, then I think we'll get to see the gears kind of clicking into place and his deck really start doing its thing.
Now, David has only one card left in hand. So Kevin, really up on cards, just needs to have time to deploy them, which sometimes can be the tricky part. Looks like Kevin wants to go looking at some pollen.
Yeah, just short of the 8 collect evidence to dig up Hearth Elemental, or I guess a non-basic would work as well if he wanted to, but I think does just want more mana here. So basic
Yeah.
island will suit him just fine.
Yeah, it's one of those weird spots, right, where it's like, yeah, I'll spend a mana now, get this. I'm even on the turn, quote unquote, but I'll be up on the future. And if I play Hearth Elemental, it was nice. Which Hearth Elemental here, not super shabby. You obviously lose your hand, but it'd be a nice big body. Opt start off the turn here after that pollen.
Yeah, you're going to be a little concerned about Darude playing the 5th land, leveling a talent, regrowing the Rage, and then Rage with the Drake Hatcher is a lot of damage and then potentially a lot of material on the back end. So Kevin will just cast Hearth Elemental, draw a card off Beanstalk, one of the nice interactions here in the deck.
Yep. 5 cards in graveyard, and this is one of the things we see with Tolarian Terror, I think, most often. Although maybe we're going to start seeing more with Hearth Elemental. It's just these like 1 mana cantrip land finder cards with these things just lead to you doing a lot of little things into sort of these big bodies that can often stabilize a board.
Mm-hmm.
David, oh, we found a pain land and stock up, so we're going to cast stock up. This is a big moment.
And that has to feel terrifying from Kevin's side, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, David was down to just one card in hand, and you're always dreading it, that please don't be stock up, right? And it being that there, along with a mana, as the other backup cards, we can actually deploy anything else we find. might mean David can actually push through this Hearth Elemental that was looking to kind of have the board checked.
Yeah, hard to get a clear view of David's virtual hand, if you like, but it looks like maybe a Chorizo Cutter, which would be the second spell this turn, so no immediate impact there, but would be a great thing to have to set up next turn.
Yeah, I think he found Corey Silk Cutter and another Drake Hatcher.
Okay, but then doesn't have attack, so now I mean Kevin has to brace for impact, and this turn has to be big. But he's got the breathing room to do it, and a lot of mana and a lot of cards. So we'll see what his deck can piece together.
His
He
hand
could
very
also.
land heavy.
It is. I mean, he has his own talent threat here, right? Where he could level talent, get back this talent big enough, and now he has that classic loop. Kind of, in effect, it would be the only thing he can do this turn. So maybe that's not enough, but that threat is almost looming over the game from both sides, right?
Mhm. All right, opt. We like the card we had. Looks like, is that a Faraz? Yeah, I think that's a Faraz Dispersal is what we found. That's a great one for making sure that we don't die to any sort of big burst like a Monstrous Rage. Yeah, David's like, wait, how's this work? Reading this, he's like, okay, that one's going in the cube later. All right, we are
So
going
yeah,
to.
this problem will collect the evidence. Go find Hearth Elemental. I'm a little surprised that there isn't. I mean, it's not really a toolbox card in this deck, right? So you don't have like the one copy of such and such, but this card it's almost a split card here. It's a basic land or it's Hearth Elemental, and I
Yeah,
guess sometimes you find your Tarnation Vista or something, but for the most part, we're not getting too ambitious with the analyzers. They're there for a reason, and the deck is remaining disciplined there. There's no random. I don't even know what the utility card would be, which maybe is part of the issue with it.
yeah, definitely. I actually think so often too. That's something that I see come up that kind of leads players astray is they get too cute with their toolboxy cards, right? And I'm sure
Hmm.
you and I have had this temptation before as well of like that card should be more mana, right? Oh no,
Yeah,
the Vista thing,
yeah.
the
So
weird land.
we had a bunch floating, blue, green, red from Vista.
Yes.
So and that would cost me. So that has paid for itself effectively. The one card I'd be curious to ask them about is Eddie Crab, because I can imagine
Mm.
spots where you find your crab and then that's the thing that buys you time or like clears away for stuff, and it seems like a decent card in the deck anyway. But so chat testifying, yeah, one crab and one Suncrafter Mage. A card that people really got excited about from Tarkir and really has not made any waves at all yet. In older versions, so that checks out.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah. Well, excuse me. Before I thought we maybe had to stop the match there for a second. Yeah, I think so often people just like overcook a bit, right? And it's like no, like you described it, split card. Find my land or get my Hearth Elemental. That's good enough. Fixing my mana, casting this card. I'm happy doing that. Maybe we have a sideboard card or whatever that slightly changes, but don't overcomplicate things and have all these cards that are super situational that you're never really gonna want to get.
Yeah, we do have some of those in the sideboard for when, you know, game one, you want your configuration to be flexible against most people. When you know what the matchup is, that's when you can bring in, we see the Obstinate Baloth, Kino Curator, and the Twin Maw Stormbrew, the one white pip in the entire 75 here, where the actual goal there is the Omen Hearth, the Charming Bite, roast, if you like. But the nice thing about omens being on creatures like adventures is you can analyze for them, so that can join the toolbox.
Yeah, a really nice one in that regard. That's a card I think we're gonna see a lot of very little play in the sideboard. If that makes sense, it's gonna pop up over the course of its life. It's gonna be pretty good, and it's gonna go back to being in the sideboard, and people being like, "Am I really gonna play this card?"
Yeah, I wonder what percentage of decks the register of that card can actually cast the white half, and then do you find a way to sneak in like the one Sun Below Verge or something, just so you theoretically have outs in your mono red deck or something?
Yeah, yeah. I've got Fountain Port, because it makes a
Yeah.
treasure and makes some fish. All right, Hearth Elementals, boom, attack for 8. Of note too here, David took Monstrous Rage first. We have another shortage of talent, so we could have grabbed Sleight of Hand or Stock Up, but David wanted Rage over Stock Up and Sleight of Hand as the one he could get right away that kind of guarantees.
Yeah, and Vista being used there again to make mana and then leveling talent there. And so that talent will now be fodder for the Torture Tower that it just returned. So we'll get rid of that one Drake Hatcher.
All right, we're gonna leave the card on top of Torch the Tower. Afara is still in hand to answer any creature that gets a little too out of control, and an Otter on defense as well.
Yeah, I mean,
Land.
starting from this position, it's not inconceivable that D-Rood, if he, let's say, drew another stock up, or depending on how the turn went, he could conceivably kill Kevin from 11 through that Afara's dispersal. But
Mhm.
drew his card, very quickly scooped it up. That was not in the card. So Kevin Anctil, with the Teemo Power Stack, going to take a 1-0 lead here, going into sideboarding.
Yeah, it does make me wonder too. I mean, David clearly had a plan, right? He thought for a second, leveled up his talent, like all the greats who kind of thought through their turn, and then picked up Monstrous Rage. So he had a clear play in mind, but I do wonder, what was the tiebreaker going that direction over something like Stock Up? But we're gonna take a look here at this very awesome Teamer Prowess deck, is what we're calling it here on coverage. Melee is making us call it blue, red, green in your corner. Don't worry about that. It's all safe together. And this deck is super dope. But Dom, what do you like in the sideboard for this matchup?
So most decks, if you ask that question, their sideboarding against Prowess is going to be pretty minimal because Prowess is so popular that you kind of have to main deck a lot of those anti-Prowess cards anyway. The main deck configuration already good to go in the matchup, but we can make some tweaks here and there. So the change the equation as fantastic as ever against these low to the ground red decks, and then you could mix up the interaction, right? Like, do you want something like Heritage Reclamation, the third copy for cutters and talents and so on? Do you want stuff like Floodmore or a Braid, Pyroclasm even? I think that more for the against the aggressive versions and when you're on the draw, but an option to keep in mind. And then I don't think he wants the charring bite, the Stormbrew to either to tutor for or just to draw against stuff like Drake Catcher, probably. But it's an option at least if there's something that's maybe worse than we're giving it credit for.
Makes sense to me. Let's check out the Is It deck and see here. As this is probably a deck David wasn't thinking about in preparation for the event. Maybe he heard some rumblings, but probably didn't know exactly. So, looking at this sideboard, adapting on the fly, what do you think is going to happen?
Yeah, tough. I mean, we're kind of thinking about this for the same time as David is, but I imagine you almost board as if you're against a control deck of sorts, as opposed to another prowess variant. Maybe the slower ones. Like if you think you're against the Thundertrap Trainer style prowess deck, then if you have a plan on your sideboard sheet for that, then maybe some of that translates over here. But what was your intuition? Like, how would you approach it?
Yeah, so I mean, some of the things that jump out to me is like I think I probably want, like my own this town is like something that's like on the back
Mm.
of my mind, like, okay, that's something that can kind of clear the way, maybe cause some issues. Stock Up kind of jumps out to me as a card I sort of want more of. I mean, I'm kind of the opinion I want 444 in my main deck. I almost never want to cut them. So like it's a little hard for me to imagine going off from there. And then, the deal 5 I'm pretty interested in, and the Disdainful Stroke I'm pretty interested in. The more I talk about it, maybe I'm lower on the this town stuff. Maybe that's just not what it's about. I feel like I want to be leaning into the fact that my deck is a bit more aggressive. That is the part of like, when I'm processing all this that I really think about.
Yeah, it's funny with these this town mirrors, right? Where if
Mhm.
your deck is built to exploit this town, you have a lot of permanents that you're happy bouncing yourself and then replaying, which kind of means that from the other side, there's not a ton of stuff that they're happy to bounce to set you back, right? Do you want to
Mhm.
bounce at Hearth Elemental? No. Do you want to bounce their talent or their color? You can bounce the tokens, sure, but
Mhm.
then they still have this game piece sticking around. So in the this town mirrors, weirdly, like this town itself can be a bit of an awkward card, or it just becomes almost an enabler for your own stuff instead of a disruptive piece against theirs.
Mhm.
But I
Yeah.
imagine like the cyborg stock up will definitely come in. Um, you know, things to re-trick over their removal. So maybe this is a good spell pierce matchup. I could believe that.
Mhm. I can totally buy that.
I know chat asked last round if we were playing this event, what would we have chosen? And uh, for for my part, we could pencil that one in already, right? Now, my follow up question is: okay, do I get to see the deck list from this tournament first? Because if so, I'm probably following Kevin's lead. I think that this is up my alley and has looked quite impressive on camera so far.
Yeah, I think, if I had, like, I don't know, like Pascal messages me like I got this deck, trust or whatever, I'm gonna run it through at least like, a couple games, get a feel for it, you know what I mean? But it would be really hard to get me off the prowess deck. I think the prowess deck is very, very good, and like a bold take here, but the is it prowess deck is just, I don't know. I was not originally planning to go to either RC. Basically, just kind of had some stuff going on in life. But there's a moment where after seeing it all, I was like, maybe I should like last second fly to Hartford to make it happen because this deck is just so good. I feel very confident I could, convert to a pro tour
Or
if I played this.
oh, hey, you do what CFT Sock did. Do that for both RCs, and then come to this one too to try and LCQ in, succeed, and now they are, I believe, still X and 2 in this tournament. So life at top 8, and we may be seeing more of them here as well. So a really nice storyline there.
Definitely. We got land goes the first couple turns here. David passing back. Doesn't want to play a sleight of hand yet. Not sure he's looking for. Wants to save that. I think that's something that we see too often. Players just throwing around their cantrips when they don't have a plan. Analyze the pollen here off the Yavimaya coast. Take one for it, Kevin. Powerful card. Get a land and sneak a beanstalk into play.
Yeah, so there's a cutter, and that's why you keep the sleight of hand in reserve, right? Like you want to not be forced to spend some other spell at a time where you don't want to. But okay, both players have dueling spell bases here, so cutter will resolve. But 2 spells already been cast, Diva down to mana, so no token being made this turn at the very least.
Yeah, and David should be at 19. We used a pain land to cast this. Is it this Corey Seal Cutter? Excuse me. And now Kevin needs to think, what am I going to do this turn? Gonna lose another life. Down to 18 goes Kevin. Play, I think, an up the beanstalk. The card I think we're going to be seeing a lot of over the next year and some change if we don't get a change in standard. Mountain pass of the turn. I do believe we have a Torch of the Cower in hand there for Kevin.
Yeah, it's funny to think back even a few months, right, to when Beanstalk was a format-defining card, seen as a kind of oppressive card, a lot of calls for it to be banned, and now it's almost a novelty seeing it outside of something like the domain deck specifically. But I would not be surprised if those conversations happen again before too long.
Yeah. A lot of uncommons being really strong recently, Dom. Have you noticed that? A lot of the like kind of outliery cards are just, these uncommons.
Well, yeah, if you think back to that 3-pronged axis that defined standard before Tarkir, right? You had Hopeless Nightmare, this hand ain't big enough. You had Heartfire Hero, and you had Up the Beanstalk, and not a rare insight there.
Yeah. Torch the Tower, gonna take down this monk. You're seeing Kevin do this post combat. That way, if David had something like Monstrous Rage, Kevin wouldn't take a bunch more damage.
Yeah, very common play pattern with damage-based removal against these prowess threats in really every format at this point, right? Standard, Pioneer, and Modern.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of players, really had it happen in the first time versus Infect, right? You like try and kill the Infect creature, and they're like, Vines of the Vastwood cooked, you're dead. And be like, oh, okay, I guess I was supposed to do that. As Kevin really taking a think here about what we're supposed to do. This is one of the, hard parts of any deck, even if your matchup versus Cutter is good, is sometimes Cutter's going to play with double Cutter, and you need to have a lot of it very quickly. So Kevin's going to go and analyze some more pollen, lose another life for it.
Yeah, I know that was one of the confusions people had passing some of the early RC results of you look over all the prowess lists and the European RC, for example, the winning list is basically the exact list from week 1, day 1 on Magic Online with 1 or 2 cards change. But you also had 3 or 4 completely different prowess lists doing well in the top 8. And then since then, in Minneapolis, you had a bunch of players doing well, and so you look at their list and you think, well, I don't recognize this person. Let's look at that list, see what they were doing differently, and they weren't doing anything differently. It's just the same list.
Yeah.
And so you think, well, is there an edge to be found here if I put all the hours in, or do I just hope to have my cutters more to be on the play more? Right, just the fundamentals, if you like.
Mhm. All right, stock up here from David very quickly. Sleight of hand, another stock up. Storm Chaser's Talent, Enduring Curiosity, Mountain are the 5 here for David to think about. Looks like we have a Spell Pierce, a Curiosity, I think a land in hand for David.
Yeah, Curiosity is an interesting card in this context, right? Because it lines up pretty badly against Torture Tower and some of the bounce spells, but also if it's going to be this slugfest back and forth, eventually the Curiosity, the one of its lives will stick, and then it's a real problem for your opponent. So, not an easy card to kind of maneuver into place, but it gives you something you can play towards, like the super long games.
Yeah. And it's just a 1 of 2, right? It's not like it's a huge commitment. You see so many cards. David about to show him. All right, looks like David wants the Mountain. A long. Okay. So it's Drake Hatcher, excuse me, was the one card I misspoke on. It was Drake Hatcher. Okay, I see what's happening. All right, so taking this, and now, what is going to be the plan here? Storm Chaser's Talent is going to trigger our Quarry Steel Cutters. Not big enough to attack through Hearth Elemental. A lot of respect there from David, taking the land with so many spells available. Just knows he wants to use all his mana every turn. He's going to have a lot of uses for it as well. Kevin draws a card from Opt. Into the Floodmaw. Kevin picks up, along with a This Town Ain't Big Enough land, and I believe an Opt. This 3-color mana in Standard is painful, Dom.
Yeah, so there's a few ways you can do it, right? You can do what Jeskai Controller's doing and have a bunch of Surveil lands and a bunch of Verges, and that has its own cost, of course. You can do the Pixie or Convoke thing and have 12 fast lands and a lot of pain lands, and then that mana has its issues, as anyone who's played those decks can attest to. Or you can do something like this, where you have these load-bearing Analyzer Pollens, to get your basics, and you hope that it all just kind of comes together.
Mm-hmm. It looks like David's thinking about, he had Into the Floodmaw flicked to the front there. I think he maybe wants to bounce the Hearth Elemental and then use Enduring Curiosity to try to take over. He's going to go with Opt instead.
Yeah, usually you don't want to be bouncing Hearth Elemental, but when you have potentially 4 or 5 attackers this turn against one blocker, getting that one blocker out of the way can be a really big swing.
Yeah, especially if your Enduring Curiosity sticks around as well, right? Draw 3-4 cards. This time big enough in hand for David as well. Looks like we're figuring out, making sure we have exactly the mana we want for the spells we want to cast. Spell Pierce at the ready as well. Dropping some cards. All right, we're going to bounce our Talent and your Hearth Elemental and trigger the Quarry Steel Cutters. It's going to give Kevin a chance to respond. Excuse me, Quarry Steel Cutter. One did get destroyed last turn. Misspoke.
Yeah, the tracking in paper with, these are my old monks, these are my new monks, this one is buffed by Quarry Steel Cutter. Just tracking all of that it takes focus, and it's so easy to mess up. So both these players have been attentive to that, of course, but if you're going to play decks like this, or none of these cards are going anywhere, right? So it's worth getting used to that math and making it very intuitive.
All right, this tiny big enough is going to get cast on Hearth Elemental and one of the previous monks. It looks like it's going to trigger with Beanstalk, and David's saying, "I'm going to respond to that," and is going to cast Spell Pierce on this tiny big enough before we draw a card, just in case Kevin draws his own Spell Pierce. And now this is going to trigger Prowess for everybody. It really matters too on when did Kevin respond. Like, did we respond to this town before the monk was made? Um, looks like it doesn't matter either way, as David's going to win that game. We're going to game number 3 here, Dom.
Yeah, and if you try and write the one line description of what happened there, would it just be, well, you had double cutter, kept the spells flowing, and that was it, or was there anything more to it? Do you think?
I think that's like part one, and then like had stuff like we talked a bit about before, had stuff to interact to back it up, right? It's not like you just cast a billion cantrips. He had like spell pierces and a couple bounce spells, and I think that is a big part of it. We need to be fast, but then have the moment where Kevin's deck kind of gets churning a little bit and try and trip him up on the way, right? We're not trying to take over the game fully, just enough for us to push across the finish line. Looks like David maybe had Ral in his deck from the sideboarding here.
Yeah, I had a Rebel Salvo. What are these cards? There are a few different options that people have turned to answer bigger stuff. So like Preacher and Shieldred out of the Demon's decks, for example. But against Kevin, there's only one creature in Kevin's deck, but it's Hearth Elemental. And actually really hard for this deck to kill a 5 toughness threat otherwise, especially if, as we saw, you don't want to bounce it if you have the option. So you kind of need something like that to get that one out of the way.
Yeah, I like that as well. I wonder, like, if Unable to Scream is even a consideration. Obviously, it's not great, but like Hearth Elemental is so huge, right? I don't think
Yeah,
God.
I think that one's just a little bit too bad. Like it means
Yeah.
that on a future turn, Kevin can this time back his Hearth Elemental, or
Mhm.
your Unable to Scream gets blown up by Heavy Reclamation mid combat, and then
Mhm.
it all goes to to Hell in a Handbasket.
Yeah, that makes sense. I guess Unable to Scream is just for the mirrors proper. Then is that like the idea?
I think it's for the bigger stuff, right? Like it's for
Sure.
Archfiend and Shieldred
Oh, sure.
and
That makes a ton of sense. Yeah, you just use it as your 1 mana way to clear like a Preacher or Shieldred. That makes sense. Okay.
increasingly for Magebane Lizard as well, because that one you don't want to be casting a lot of spells, and it's also cheap enough that bouncing it is only going to buy you so much time, right? So you need some creative solution to just ignore it if you can't do something else.
No, that makes a ton of sense. I really like that. As our players here are shuffling up still for game number 3, maybe we can show them graphic design is our passion, the day 2 metagame conversion. I think we have a fun little graphic there. All right, so it started to pop up for us on our end. Here we go. Is it Prowess 31 players into day 2, 29%? I do believe that's a 3% up from where we were yesterday. 21 mono red players are 20%, 8 Azorius Omniscience, 6 Azor Orzhov Bounce, which I believe is a lot of that Edgar contingent. Demir midrange at 5, Jeskai Control at 4, and then 31 other decks make up 29% of the room. So other and Is it Prowess are tied for representation here in day number 2.
Yeah, this is our day 2 metagame breakdown. So the big winner, just looking at this at a glance, mono red. It was, I think, hovering around 10%, as it often is on day 1, but really good conversion rate. 20% here on day 2. And that's a deck which is easy to stereotype, but I think often it's seen as like a more entry level deck, right? Like if someone is new to Constructed or Magic generally, or to a format, often the default, right, is you give them the red deck or the burn deck or something, because it has like a clear focused plan and gets a lot of free wins. And there's some of that even at the RC level, but the good red players are very, very scary to play against. As we saw a bit on camera yesterday as well. So yeah, I think we had 2 at 8-1 overnight. We'll see how they're doing as the day goes on. But mono red having yet another good weekend. Wonder how much of that is just the Magebane Lizards. I mean, if if you're not too proud to put those in your main deck, if you're willing to fight dirty, if you like, then it looks like you get rewarded.
Yeah, a really interesting conversion rate and everything going on here. And let's head back to our feature match area. as it looks like the players are finishing up mulliganing here. It looks like Kevin's hand has a lot of cheap interaction. Yeah, okay, I was gonna say it looked like we had maybe one or two lands, but we had to analyze the pollen as well. So we're gonna go get that mountain there, and now we have all the colors. As David's gonna start this game off with a sleight of hand off Spiral of Canal, meaning he's probably missing something.
Now, which printing, which border of sleight of hand is your jam? If you have your druthers,
Um, I actually don't mind the newer one from Wilds of Eldraine. Um, I think that one's actually kind of nice, but I think Portal is probably the best art. I just don't have any.
the Portal one certainly has a unique feel to it. I like the I guess it should be the same across all printings, but the French sleight of hand is called pass pass, which I kind of like. So I have my French ninth edition white border sleight of hands ready to go. When I
Oh,
pick up a deck like this again.
do you not have your World Sleight of Hand anymore? The
Oh,
one you.
well, see, here's the thing: is that was foil, and
Mm.
because I mean the foil quality around that time was not high, so that now is so curved that it would be difficult to do sleight of hand with it because it would be so conspicuous. So it really is a flavor fail among other things.
All right, Slickshot show off attack for one.
There's also that the promo one. I think it was the RCQ promo, just highly abstract,
Uh-huh.
weird tentacles or whatever it is, some like Mobius strip style thing.
Yeah. Yeah, I really love the idea of that one. I think what I don't like about that card is actually how white it is, right? Like it's sort of like blindingly white, and I kind of like when a magic card at least has a hint of the color that it's supposed to be. So I feel like if it was those things with maybe like a blue tint somewhere, I would be more in love with it. Because I do like that kind of art in general. A stock up's coming down after we saw a torch the tower, take care of that slick shot show off. Part of why Sony players are a little hesitant to play Slick Shot is just dying to all the removal.
Yeah, I wonder if the trade off there is right. It's worse against Torch Tower compared to something like Drake Catcher, but and also you can't use your spells as protection, right? So with Drake Catcher, let's say
Mhm.
every prowess trigger, the first one gets it to 4 toughness, and then that gets it above Torture Tower. Slingshot only pumps its power, and it pumps it by 2. So you'll take that a lot of the time, but it means that it's hard to kind of re-trick in that sense. So it's worse against Torch, but if your opponent has a lot of bounce, well, the cheap haste threat is really nice there, whereas Drake Catcher can feel like a little cumbersome sometimes.
All right, David's got some real tough questions going on here. Looks like we've come to an answer when it comes to this stock up. I think Curiosity was among the cards. Yeah, it looks like Curiosity into the Floodmaw might have been our two take there off stock up. Kevin's going to untap going into his fourth turn. Has a lot of Into the Floodmaws in hand. That's a card that I think many players have been really surprised by. For our
And yeah, you
conversation.
see, yeah, you see like these dueling card advantage engines, right? So just all the stock ups with D-Root versus Beanstalk plus Hearth Elemental from Kevin, and that one obviously is kind of more specific and more demanding, right? Like not every deck can be a Beanstalk deck or a Hearth Elemental deck, whereas it seems like every blue deck finds a way to be a stock up deck, and for good reason.
Yeah, the card is so good, especially in the late game. Excuse me, sorry, had a moment there. That's what happens when I stock up personally, as I start yawning. But like you hit the late game, you have 5, 6 lands, whatever. You feel like you're hopeless. How you ever gonna win? You draw stock up, and suddenly it's like, oh, how do I lose? It's like it changes so quickly here. As Deaver had played the fourth lane and passed, Kevin draws for turn, decides to just attack in for 2 with the otters. David's fine with it. Has Ral in hand and curiosities. We're going to start with the curiosity here.
Yeah, I mean, if D-Root is spending turn 3 on the draw, casting stock up, and then turn 4 just passing with mana open, either there's a lot of instance there, or there's something like this. So this one is kind of telegraphed, and you see part of the downside, right? If you spend your entire turn and 4 mana playing something that just gets bounced for 1 by the Floodmaw. Also, I mean, chat asking, why do people kind of encroach on the center of the table? We have the literal red zone here. We got the sword logo, like the battlefield, and hey, if you have your creatures, you got to assert dominance. You got to send them in there.
Dom, have you ever pushed someone back in the red, like when they do this?
I haven't had to, but I'll assert myself if it comes down to that. Now
I
somehow,
I did it once.
okay, okay.
Someone was like in my playmat, and I just like I pushed their cards back, and I was just sort of like nonverbal, like you don't get to be in my play area. Sorry, I just you never get to tell the story.
I like how all of Kevin's enchantments are just hanging out in the red zone too. You know,
Well, yeah, I mean,
are the beanstalkers ready to rumble?
yeah. What if we draw a Zur? We gotta have him ready.
Mm.
Corey
And I was
Steelcutter.
calling for that bad boy.
More likely than you think. As it looks like David is maybe responding here. Opt into a spell pierce would be kind of nice. I think if we had a spell pierce, we'd probably want to fire it off here, as it looks like Kevin is stuck on mana, which means lots of spells in hand. And we drew it, Dom. Spell pierce off the opt. I mean, obviously you kind of want to get your curiosity. It's a lot of mana, but answering this Corey Steelcutter is hard to pass up when your opponent is clearly missing land drops. I'm curious to see, will we into the Flood Maw, one of these otters now, just to save life and buy us some more time? Yeah, and David wants it. He's going to get rid of that otter token. Take 2 down to 16. And I think Kevin just has ended the Flood Maw up as the only play we can do now.
Yeah, which there's no big need to have the bounce spell up on David's turn right now, but you want to have it ready to go for the curiosity. But David has a different 4-drop ready to go in Ral. So that one is also a little weak to bounce in a sense, right? Like if you need the token as a blocker, that gets reset, your Ral dies. But it's churning out new rectangles turn by turn. And at this point, if you bounce the Ral, well, David will just play it again and put you to the test.
Yeah, and D-Root has Disdainful Rogue in hand here too. So, he's played his Ral, he's ticked up or whatever, and now he's just passing. And it's going to be really hard for Kevin to actually kill the Ral, right? You need to have a lot of spells, which obviously Kevin's hand, we all know, is all spells. But he needs, a land and one of those to be like a pump spell, which his deck doesn't really play. So it has to be Torch the Tower. So D-Root kind of knows confidently it has to be into the Flood Maw to actually, quote unquote, answer my Ral, but then I'll just redeploy it like you were saying. So really big confidence turn, and with Stroke Up, what's going to really happen is Hearth Elemental is one of the few cards that could maybe catch Kevin up on board, but he has it covered.
And if Kevin wants to bounce the Ral, I mean, this town is the natural way to do that, but that technically costs 5, which is why it's so good with Beanstalk. Also
Yeah.
means in range of Disdainful Strike.
Yeah, and it looks like Kevin might be thinking that right here too. This towning time, bounce a token, excuse me, a talent. David's like, no, no, no. I'm going to stroke this before you get a chance.
And
that's
get
going
another loyalty on the Ral, of course.
to, the Prowess Planeswalker. We do get the Beanstalk draw still. Torch the Tower was the draw.
Interesting. So actually now, so Ral's at 6, right? And
Yeah.
then he's cast one spell, and Bargain Torch will deal 3, and then it can finish it off. So it took some effort. We can actually clear the Ral off the field here, and Kevin didn't have the torch when he cast the this town, right?
Yeah, no, he drew that off the up the beanstalk.
Yeah, so really heads up maneuver, I think, because he could have basically kept open the mountain or the other botanical sanctum. And if you're bouncing the talent, it would kind of make sense to leave open the blue to recast it. But I think Kevin knew the upside of if I draw the torch, I actually get rid of this really troublesome threat. That upside is really high, and he hit, and it got paid off for it.
Yeah, really tight play there from Kevin. We talked about how the Ra was going to be a problem to answer. It did take some work. Losing the talent.
I think also new, like, let's say if this gets countered, which I mean, dude has a bunch of mana open, right? And
Mhm.
I don't have mana to pay for spell pierce, then not going to be recasting that anyway. So also Hearth Elemental, chat saying in hand, so that would be an ideal follow up too. But he drew one better.
Well, yeah, and one of the things too is it wouldn't surprise me if Kevin just thought like, obviously Hearth Elemental is a good one I can play as a follow up too, but I could draw into Torch the Tower, right?
Yeah,
Like it is a play that you can make with intentionality to like maybe I get to do both.
yeah. So good turn from D-Root. Card it into Curiosity, making a monk, attacking and drawing a card. But so Kevin has to deal with ideally both the Carter and the Curiosity, but is kind of working himself out of the hole that he was in heading into last turn.
Yeah, as we've drawn the land, Dom, as
The
we
Vista.
the Vista's here, and we blow up the Corey Steel Cutter, so that's gone. David could have taken a Monstrous Rage last turn, but didn't find stock up. Disdainful Stroke, Storm Chaser's Talent, another stock up, and I believe 2 lands are the 5 cards for David here. Kevin wants to take his chance to see what we've worked through. David's basics chat are from the I believe those are the Euro ones, but there's like APAC and Euro lands, which are set after real world places. I can't remember where that island is supposed to be from. Uh, but my favorite set of basics. You can look those up. I believe those are blue pack basics.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm sure these are the same basics that he was slinging 20 years ago, right? When he was on the Pro Tour train.
Mm-hmm. I have my personal favorite art from those series as my go-to basics now. I finally, decided to pull the trigger on them because I've loved them for so long. And I had a friend locally who has a bunch of them, and I would borrow them from time to time for bigger events. But it's nice, I always think they're some of the best art in the game, and they're after real places on Earth. And so I've had some opponents be like, "Oh, I've been there before," and I'm like, "Oh, that's awesome." All right, we figured out, excuse me, what we want here off stock up. Couldn't quite make out what David took, but we do have a Drake catcher, and we're gonna pass the turn back to Kevin. And this is starting to look a little like game one. Hearth Elemental comes down, and David can't quite make it through it.
It's so big, Mason. We mentioned Meringue, 6/7 flyer. Turns out a 4/5 is still plenty big as well.
Yeah, especially when it only costs a mana to play. Now Kevin drew another Hearth Elemental. As of this town, it's gonna lead things off with the Hearth. Draw a card. It is going to get Disdainful Stroke on the Hearth. We're going to do it before Kevin has a chance to draw a potential answer spell to this, like Spell Pierce. Huge. All right. Drake Catcher does grow to a 2/4. Kevin taking a look at what's in David's graveyard again, trying to figure out what did we get from this stock up and how am I going to win this game? I'm kind of up on material a little bit, but down on lands. I can't deploy as many things as David can in a turn. And with cards like stock up from David's deck, it's not the end of the world here to have 7 lands in play for our aggressively slanted deck. As I think we have the Boiler Room, Dom.
Yeah, the furnace, the sauna, which right now Kevin doesn't have enough cards in hand that the sauna can really pick off everything he wants, but could just kill the prowess monk. Do you want to keep it there for now, or maybe the goal here is play the furnace and then the next this town the following turn can pick that up, bounce something else. But I think Kevin has better ways to use his mana for now, and he's actually going to send in the first Hearth Elemental into this board. So I guess now this is going to be town on my talent or on my Hearth Elemental and
Yeah.
your monk. Okay. Draw a card as well.
All right, analyze the pollen was the pickup. Then we're gonna use the red
You,
floating mana.
yep, from the Tarnation Vista.
Yeah, Kevin could analyze here. You're gonna have the Hearth Elemental. We can always do it next turn. Hold up into the Flood Maw this turn. Could also grab another land.
I'm gonna say this would be a nice spot for an Anemo crab. I'm
Yeah.
gonna not to give too much pro crab propaganda here, but
All right. Opt, land, Storm Chaser's Talent are the cards in hand for David. David would kill for a Monstrous Rage here in order to break through everything. Now we know Kevin has Into the Flood Maw to stop that from happening. 5 minutes on the clock. This game has been going. Players playing fast too. Don't get us wrong. A couple spots we had to tank. We've had some complicated board states, but overall the play has been crisp and quick. I wonder if Kevin pulls the cards more towards him if he feels like he's behind. I would love to go back and watch past feature matches. Are we in the red zone because we feel good? What exactly is happening here? Storm Chaser Talent comes down. Could level up here. Have a lot of really good ones to find. And if your Storm Chaser's Talent gets into the Flood mod, not the end of the world, you get another Otter. Run it back on the next turn.
so in a game like this where we've reached this weird kind of stall of sorts, what are each player playing towards in your view? Like, what if you're Rood, or then if you're Kevin, how are you trying to go over the top in the next few turns?
Yeah, if I'm David, I'm trying to figure out a way to kind of push through damage. That's why I mentioned Monstrous Rage before, right? Because from David's perspective, that could maybe clear the Hearth Elemental, even if it is a trade with one of his creatures, right? And sort of allow him to actually like start drawing cards off Curiosity, put Kevin on the back foot, and use this mana advantage we have. Cards like Stock Up are also pretty big in this regard, just trying to trigger prowess enough, right? And just use more of our cards more efficiently. Because Kevin kind of has us beat on like the card advantage normal stuff, and he's starting to get enough mana that I'm gonna have issues keeping up because his deck is so many 1 and 2 mana cards. We just need to apply pressure and make things awkward with him. And this is kind of the awkward part, right? Kevin's at 18. Even if David pushes through here, there's going to be a really low chance of us actually killing Kevin because we don't have anything like Corey Steelcutter to back this all up. I wonder if David maybe goes for like a Storm Chaser's Talent line, leveling up. Meanwhile, from Kevin's side, it's just about, not dying and continuing to cast as many spells as we can each turn and sort of establishing a big board presence. All right. I just realized as we play this Furnace, they had rooms coming out a year before the Clue game came out for Magic. Our little crossover. That must have been frustrating for somebody. It's like, oh, I wish we could just, have the rooms actually in there. This does damage to target creature equal to the number of cards in hand. We have 4. We are targeting the Drake Hatcher. So opt in response. This is what you talked about before. Drake Hatcher can outgrow removal.
Are you a big fan of The Room, Mason?
Oh, that movie's fine.
Wow, that's look. Usually it's like Marmite, right? You either love it or you hate it. So this fine is actually the hottest take you possibly could have delivered there.
Yeah, it's like, I don't know. I remember watching it for the first time and thinking like, oh, there's like, like I did not do it and hi Mark, like that kind of stuff was kind of funny. But I always kind of felt like people were being especially as I learned that like that's kind of how that guy is, and it's not like a character he was playing. Um it became a little less funny to me, when it's sort of like the joke is this guy, sort of getting made fun of, quote unquote, into the Flood Maw here.
I have met Tommy Wiseau at a screening of The Room and can confirm he is very much like that. It's not a bit. It's not an act. That's just how he is.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, though, so second spell on Kevin's turn by Rood. So opt and then Floodmaw, protecting the Drake Hatcher from the 4 damage from the Roaring Furnace.
Yeah, and I like this play from David. He starts with the opt, knows he probably wants to into the Flood Maw soon anyways, and he probably doesn't want to do the Hearth Elemental. So just save your creature and force Kevin to commit a little bit more here and have this body laying around. Even if the body is just, on blocking duty. Kevin draws a land for the turn off the up the beanstalk trigger.
Worth noting, our round clock is dwindling there, getting down to 1 minute, even I think factoring in the extension that the players had. So assuming that is up to date, then another incentive to get things moving for one player to find a way to break through this board still.
Yeah. This is an interesting attack too. You attack with Hearth. You can block with like Otter plus Draycatcher, excuse me. But the Draycatcher does have 4 damage on it. You could block with Curiosity plus Otter. Remember that Otter is a 3/3. But if there's like an Into the Flood Maw, things get really bad for you really quickly. Kind of a very nice attack here for Kevin.
Yeah. And we do see Floodmore in Kevin's hand, looking at the back there.
If we fall to 8, these 2 Hearth Elementals represent lethal. All right. David's going to take it. Maybe try and set up a chance to bust through everything on the next turn. Storm Chaser's Talent. Going to get deployed here. Make another Otter for us. 13 seconds. Land go. David's going to be turn 0 almost assuredly here. As we have 5. All right, David draws his card. And we're in thinking time. It's even possible that for the players, they know they are in turns already. So that might be why David was slowing down there. As Corey Steelcutter is in hand, along with a land, things are awkward now, Dom.
Yeah, and Cutter is a thing that does let you break board stalls, not just by going wide, but also by going big, as we saw. Just if you have a big thing, Curiosity or Hatcher, or on Kevin's side, the Hearth Elementals, we saw that to good effect yesterday. Just give something a little power buff and trample, and that can actually crack on through.
Yeah, Dom, I think we're going to level up the talent.
Oh, it's the rare level 3? Okay.
I think it's Otter in time. So, but the question becomes, is David going to... Okay, so we level up, but we don't play the Cutter. We're going to hold that to try and get a flurry on a future turn. A Braid into the Floodmaw unknown there for Kevin. And it has 2 Hearth Elementals. You could... It's so close to lethal here. A Braid one thing into the Floodmaw the other. Attack for 7.
Yeah, so Kevin, this is turn 1. Kevin will also have turn 3 and turn 5. Try and get across the finish line.
Could do something like level up a Storm Chaser's Talent this turn after combat. I like this. Give David a chance to block with something. Maybe you Braid, maybe you bounce. Try and get like a nice little 2-for-1. And then level up your talent probably afterwards. Pick up some piece of interaction, pass back, and try and set up that lethal.
Yeah. And both players here, like, they want a result. They want there to be a winner. I think they understand that, assuming I'm doing the math right, a second draw is effectively the same as a loss in terms of the record you need for various thresholds here. So they want there to be a winner, and they want it to, we'll see what happens if there's someone clearly ahead at the end of turn 5 or something with lethal on turn 6. But let's hopefully get a nice clean resolution here in turn still.
All right, Vista's being activated.
Now coast from hand. So this is 4 to level up talent again.
Yeah. Our coverage is trying to make this clear. It's not on screen. It's turn. That's supposed to be a turn 1 counter. Production, if you want to do something like that, feel free to push it up a little.
Oh, this would be a good spot for a nice chunky dice. Just slam that bad boy in there.
Yeah, also production, that is not what you're supposed to do. I said move it up, not rearrange. You're fired, we're out. Wow. Get someone new. It's harsh but fair on my part. No, but jokes aside, there we go.
Oh, there it is. So yeah, Kevin buys back the Heritage Reclamation and blows up the fully level Stormclatus talent. I think reasoning that maybe this is not the play you would make in a game that was scheduled to go on indefinitely, but given the time is a concern here, the talent, if David has a big turn, he'll just churn out 3 or 4 blockers, right? And then it's actually impossible to seal the deal. Whereas here, you can plausibly 1-for-1 everything else.
Yep.
So there's Cutter and Drake Hatcher, so that'll make a blocker 2. And now David's out of cards though, so Kevin can kind of use everything at his disposal to
Well,
just clear as much of this as he can and then get across the line. So we see Floodmore and a Braid.
well, David can attack though, Dom, with like the trample, right? The otter.
Yeah, I mean he can. He has the same incentive to try and get the win himself. So Floodmore going to be pretty nice in this combat.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll eat the Cory token.
I wonder if you're supposed to bounce the cat. I guess you just replay the cat immediately.
Yeah.
Yeah. Disregard that. Yeah, so that's a 3/3 otter because we did heritage on the upkeep there.
And so, yeah, that will actually bounce off the Drake Hatcher, which is nice.
Mm-hmm.
Dude, we'll get a new card.
Did he draw stock up? He picked up 3 mana.
I mean, I assume if he drew stock up, he'd be casting that thing right away.
I mean, I get wanting to hold it to me. If you did draw, I can understand taking a half second to be like, am I supposed to save this to like guarantee a cutter trigger? But you probably just need to use all your mana. So the fact that we're passing probably makes me feel like that is not the case.
I mean, also, you might, if you had stock up, you might need to cast it just to find defensive cards to not die. Because Kevin has a lot of mana, a lot of stuff that I think the second talent has not been leveled up to 2 yet. So that can buy back Spell on Demand.
It is not. Now, David has like, okay, it's an opt. That's huge.
Okay.
Yeah, that's going to give us the Drake Hatcher living up to a 2/4. We found Storm Chaser's talent.
I mean, potentially, if David found another isn't, he could also trigger Cutter now on Kevin's turn as well.
And he did, Dom. I think he drew into the Flood Maw, which means if Kevin goes to level up on a Storm Chaser's talent, he's going to get a fish for his trouble, but... All right, looks like we're using the Vista plus the land attempting to level this up. Let's see if David responds. Obviously, giving back a talent is a little awkward.
I love the ominous giant 0 that has just appeared on the screen.
Yeah. I don't really understand what's happening. It's also not on the Twitch stream. Only we can see that, Dom. That's for our eyes only.
Premium content.
Right, in the Floodmaw back. Maybe it wasn't in the Floodmaw that David drew. Or maybe he's afraid of giving Kevin another like auto blocker and he's thinking my best bet of winning is getting him to attack all out. Because David doesn't get... This is David's next turn. It's his last turn to attack, so... Alright, in the Floodmaw. It's going to be cast.
Twitch chat saying they could see the 0. They're falling for our trap. There was no 0. We just made it up. But now there's some mass psychosis incident going on in the Twitch chat here.
Yeah, chat, why would I say you couldn't see the 0 if it wasn't true? Just be a crazy person thing to do. As we see the Flood Maw bounce the Drake Catcher. Yeah, I don't know what happened with David's life total either. Production, if we can get that fixed.
I assume this is getting ready for the next match, which will start, as soon as, I think this is the last one going. So, as soon as our fine folks here have concluded. But yeah, there is a Floodmore. And another blocker or attacker for D-Root. So yeah, this turn went about as badly as possible for Kevin.
Yeah, and we could double block here too, right? Drake Catcher plus Cory Steelcutter on the hearts if you want to. But if you do, you're probably playing to the draw versus playing to win. So I imagine we'll see David take 4, because I imagine he wants to try and set up lethal on the next turn, and the cards stock up with these 2 in play. Could easily do that. Maybe thinks he can win either way. I think one of those has to live, right? Maybe there was damage done to it. I missed it. Thought Drake Catcher was a 3/5. Oh, it was the abrade at the start of it all. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yep, there we go. Long turn there.
So now, I mean, D Rood on tap for turn. So this was turn 3. Is that
Uh,
correct?
yes, yeah. D-Root is turn 4. This will be his last turn, which is sort
Okay.
of why I mentioned like I thought he might take the damage, right? Because if you draw something like stock up, very likely to actually win the game. But he still could. I mean, stock up here plays. Oh, this is a nice slow roll. It's sleight of hand. All right. Something like slight into.
I mean, 14 is so much damage. I guess, yeah, it's.
Yeah, and you can see too, right? Like if he had had the monk token left behind and the Drake catcher, how easily we could have hit 14 this turn, right? But we found Storm Chaser's talent. Storm Chaser's talent could be played and leveled up to make sure you get another spell, but I don't think there's like a monstrous rage in the graveyard. If you were to play a cutter and equip it to the Drake catcher, that doesn't do
Oh,
it either.
yeah. If you find a new cutter, so let's say
Yes.
that happened, which I guess it can't, right? Because we know which 2 cards D Rood is choosing between.
Yeah, I guess you can't get. I didn't actually know what the
Yeah,
second card was originally, but I think that was the Rebel.
Rebel Salvo. Yeah. So
Yeah.
I mean,
So
even that, if it was, I think even cutter would not. It would not be enough. So yeah, basically, as it stands right now, D Rood cannot win this game, organically via damage before the end of turns. Kevin, after last turn, I don't think can either. I mean, you
yeah,
just he'll untap with a token, and that's it. So yeah, we'll let you know what the confirmed result is when it's locked in. But yeah, this is comfortably the last match going at this point. So we will know that
yeah,
when everyone else does.
yeah. I think you take the kill. You can take the kill spell, kill the otter, equip the Corey Steel Cutter to your Drake Catcher, draw 3 cards, get some Drakes going, right, and then hope Kevin concedes because you're so far ahead. Because you would do a lot of damage on this turn, right? Like if you move the cutter over to, I guess you, yeah, moving it over is best because then you get the Drake in the air. And it's just pretty reasonable that David actually would present a lethal or near lethal line in that world on the next turn. As it looks like we're going to level up this talent. We're going to pick up into the Flood Maw. We're going to probably cast this into the Flood Maw on the Otter token. Once again, I think hoping to try and set up, hey, I'm going to basically have lethal. This Corey Steel Cutter token, I believe, is 4, plus the Enduring Curiosity is 4 more, so 8.
J'ai joué, j'avais ça, j'ai Dreamcatcher, Slide of Hand, Curry, après ça,
All right.
Talent, level des talents.
Oh, we were counting to see if we'd played a land for turn or not.
So
Spirable game.
any francophones in chat eating good right now?
All right, and Kevin has Heart Elemental, Torch the Tower. It does feel like a game that's, if untimed, like this was a Pro Tour Finals, we would probably still be here for another turn or two, it looks like.
Oh yeah, and D Rood drew how many cards off the Curiosity, right? So if there was a turn 6, let's say, he'd have more gas to work with. It goes without saying, right? There's no obligation to, if I'm this far ahead, then I should concede or whatever. It's if both players can reach that agreement between themselves organically, then sure, but no obligation there. Also, the plays for the past few turns have all been warped around this looming threat of the round timer, right? So
Yeah.
I think you can point to each player on successive turns doing things which probably they wouldn't do if this was, you know, an untimed top 8 match, which we're going to have for you. We're going to have 3 of them, at least, towards the end of our day. And, you know, hopefully you're going to see at least one of these 2 players in some of them.
Oh, it's 2. My bad.
Yeah, the talent was on 2 there. We played and leveled, got Flood Maw. Players just making sure the game stays accurate. Obviously, David won't get another turn. Hearth Elemental is going to get Hardcast, draw a card from up the Beanstalk. Heritage was the draw. That's an answer to either Curiosity or Corey Steelcutter.
Ouais. Je pense que sur le late game, je devrais être quand même pas pire avec mon board, mais c'était pas fini. C'était un petit.
Looks like we're maybe going
Peut-être
to the
un Curry
Vista.
Steelcutter, je vais peut-être prendre les 4.
Yeah, and so you see, yeah, it's a tapped out. These players are talking among themselves, like, okay, I have these things. I'm gonna kill 2 things, you know.
Laisser mon rouge dans mon
And I think in this situation, probably blow up the Steel Cutter and then torch the cat.
Stock up.
Oh, I see. We're gonna actually try to find some way to win, I guess. So we're gonna Heritage away a stock up in order to draw a card for Kevin. Again, one of those plays we talked about when time is involved. You know, your play needs to change a little. All right. Gonna play another Up the Beanstalk, it seems. Draw a card. Botanical Sanctum was the draw. And torch the tower.
Est-ce que tu veux concéder? Je pense fairly ahead ce tour-là. Si je vais juste jouer pour le control, je pète ton Curry Steel Cutter, je pète ton Enduring Curiosity, je level mon Tanat.
All right, and I'm not exactly sure if we drew what's happening here. We will get that information to y'all as soon as we have it.
Oh, le fucking torch pour tuer
So,
le
I
Ral.
think no rest for the wicked here. We and you will not have a long break before round 12, which, hey, I like that. More magic as soon as possible. But